Welcome back, radio entrepreneurs, listeners, and fans. I'm producer Jillian King, and I'm excited to introduce you all to part two of the Spring 2026 FBA Family Business Panel discussion, Perspectives on What Family Businesses Need Today to Survive. Next, I will introduce our panelists and the moderator for this discussion. We are joined today by Richard Hirschen, partner at Gray Gray & Gray, Stephen Wilchins, founding partner at Wilchins, Cosentino and Novins, and Stewart Karger, administrator of Belmont Manor. Welcome. And lastly, Radio Entrepreneur's host and founder of Mage LLC, Jeffrey Davis. Welcome, Jeffrey. I will now hand the conversation over to you.
Thank you, Jillian. And for any of our listeners who missed the first segment where we really got into depth, not just into the history of the organization, but also the transition, I think that for families, it's a very interesting topic, which everybody struggles with. I know my father struggled with it in his business, and my in-laws did as well. And so did the trustees in my in-laws' businesses. So this is a hot topic. And I'm not trying to leave that one, Stewart, because I think it's really the hot potato for everybody. But I will ask you maybe to take it off that track for just a couple of minutes first and say to you, you're in an industry that's constant, and because I put this context into that last question, you're in an industry that's constantly becoming more and more regulated. And you went through COVID, which must have been just a total nightmare for an industry like yours. And now you're out of COVID and things are still becoming regulated every day. The concept of how did you deal with all this stuff, and how do you constantly create an organization with stability that's always pivoting to the changing healthcare needs of this country? How do you deal with all that stuff, and what did you go through?
Well, going through COVID was obviously the worst time of my life, of my career, and it was something that we could have never imagined. And in the midst of it, it's exactly 6 years ago yesterday that we went on lockdown, and I worked 7 days a week during COVID, and we had a really tough time in the end of March and through the first 2 weeks in April with many cases and many deaths. And then we had nothing for like 2 years. But what did we do? Like everything else, we sat up, we came up with plans, we reached out to the local health department, we reached out to DPH and looked for guidance and implemented protocols. The unfortunate part is that since COVID was something that was an anomaly and there wasn't a lot known, the guidance that we were given by the officials was not right. And unfortunately, they knew that, and it made things worse. But ultimately, it was our responsibility. And when a regulatory agency tells you to do something, you do it, good, bad, or indifferent, and then dealt with it. But we worked really hard, and we not only took the protocols, but things that were common sense and things that nursing knew about infection control, about isolation, about PPE, and obviously vaccines. And we had vaccines were mandated by the government, so every employee that could work had to be vaccinated, and that was a task to get everybody vaccinated, as well as obviously all residents. We would not admit anyone that wasn't vaccinated. We would not couldn't have an employee that wasn't vaccinated. So that helped out a lot. But beyond COVID, as I had said in the last segment, the care that we give is changing. It was before it was the 90-year-old lady that needed some help in their ADLs, acts of daily living, bathing, dressing, feeding, walking. And now it's more aspects of, wound care, IVs, antibiotics, intravenous's, G-tubes, diabetic care. So what did we do? We researched and we made policies ourselves. As I said before, we didn't have the corporation to do that, but we ended up stepping up and looking at the industry. And the Mass Senior Care, which is our trade organization, puts out a lot of good information. And we would go and listen to we'd go to seminars back then, and now webinars, and gather the information. And as a team, come up with the policies of how we were going to move forward and change with the times. And we're still changing. We're still changing today.
Thank you. Anybody follow-up question or how this connects to how we left off the last segment of the transition of leadership? Do you guys want to jump in first, or you putting it out to me, Stephen?
I want to know, like, what do you need to do, Stewart, right, to do right, to attract and retain strong non-family talent in your business? Knowing that you don't know, what happens next, but hoping that you will retain the asset, your family, and the legacy going forward.
I have found out what talent, staff, employees want. They want respect. They want to be supported. They want to know that the management and upper leadership understand them and hears when they have to say something, when they say something. That's more important than their time off, or more important than necessarily their wage, because wages can be similar. But I find that what I do here is when an upper management isn't hearing a manager, or the manager is saying, "Oh, you're a professional, you can do it on your own." I think more importantly, you have to listen to people and you have to hear what they're saying. Now, I'm not suggesting you need to do their job, but if someone is asking the question and someone is struggling and not understanding or not having the outcomes, you need to be with them and you need to educate them and show them that they're supporting them and showing what's important and how to get the job done. And at the same token, if they're struggling because they don't have the right staff, are you dealing with it rather than not dealing with it? And I think that sometimes certain managers have the tendency to sweep things under the rug because they don't want to deal with it. And, things don't get better that way. It's really hitting things head on and making people accountable. I will say, my staff are very devoted to me because I'm very fair. And I will give anyone a second chance or educate people. The only time I don't, if someone is egregious or does something or says something to a resident or a patient that's inappropriate, I have no thought or remorse if they have to be let go, because they have the ability to act a certain way. I really empower people to let them know that they have the power to have the job being secure. The power is you show up on time, you do what's expected of you, you're a good employee, and that's that. And I don't get involved in most employee issues, only it's on a high level. But when I do say that, I always say, you have the power to make it or break it here.
Over the 40 or so years that you've been working there, have you seen changes in the workforce that maybe when you first started, people took the things differently in your style, and maybe the younger folks that are joining your team now are a little different?
Yeah, not to sound like an old guy, but I think the younger generation tend to want to do what they want to do. They may have a job with, 20 different responsibilities, and they will kind of choose and pick what they want to do because that's what they like, or that's what they feel they excel in, and maybe put the other things aside or make an excuse why they don't want to do the other things. And, no, this is the part of your job. So yeah, I do find that the work ethic is different today than it was many, many years ago. I also think it's the individual person. And I don't want to stereotype young people, because we have young people that are wonderful and they could be from anywhere in the world. And older people that are wonderful, and then some that are not. And, we're pretty well 100% staffed, but, it doesn't mean that it's easy to find good people.
Right.
And we don't do a lot of recruiting. We don't do too much advertising. Most of it's word of mouth. Usually when we need a management position, it's usually someone that knows someone, or someone that came to us from another facility that knows someone that's not happy where they are. That's how most of our recruiting happens.
So maybe I'm the pot calling the kettle black, but in terms of, your leadership, you mentioned in the first segment how you learned from your dad to be totally hands-on. You're working much later at Belmont Manor than your father ever did. And we don't know how long you're going to work there. And I know for me personally, I used to work 60 to 80 hours a week and I never think twice about it. And now there's no way I could do that consecutively. So, how do you adapt being such a hands-on person to that business, knowing the succession plan may be in place, may not be in place? You may have your son, you may not have your son. He may be part-time, he may be a trustee. How do you adapt today to exist at Belmont Manor, knowing that you're not the same person you were 30 years ago?
I'm delegating more, allowing people to take more responsibility, trying to be the leader and overseeing things and not jumping into it. And I'll give you an example. What's one of our most important aspects of the facility is admissions, because admissions drive the revenue. And the admission process has changed greatly over the years. It used to be all on the phone, and now it's all through online portals from the hospitals, unless a family is calling on their own. And so the admission coordinator gets all of the different referrals, and we get dozens a day, and I get them as well. And when he first came to work here, I was looking at them and responding, and he was responding. And finally, I said to him, okay, you're making us look bad. We're both responding at the same time and maybe saying something the same, something different. And it took me a long time to back myself off. So now I'm at the point that I just look at them. I just look at them. I do not respond to them unless he's not here. But I do make notes. And I do go back to him and say, what about this, and this one? Are they potentials? Who's there? As I can step back as long as I'm giving the information and I feel comfortable that I know the work is being done. That's how I step back in knowing that on a weekend that the admission person is going to be checking some of those portals to make sure and communicating so I don't have to. So I've made some strides, as you know. I'm not quite there yet. I do take off on Tuesdays early because I take my granddaughter somewhere every Tuesday afternoon. So I leave here about 2:30, 2:45. And just for example, I'm going away next Thursday to Florida with my son Craig, that when we're talking about, just to get a weekend, the two of us away. And I think my flight's at 12:30. Normally I would come to work early in the morning. I'd be picked up early, and then I'd be picked up here and go to the airport. And I've said to myself, you know what? I'll get picked up at home at 9:30, 10 o'clock. I'm not going to rush to work for an hour or two. So that's a lot for me. That's a lot for me. So it's little steps like that of what I'm trying to pull back. But it's also feeling comfortable with the people that are here.
Good. Again, I'm always eager to ask questions, but I'll ask my other panelists. Do you have any follow-up questions?
Not right now.
Well, this weekend would be a good opportunity to delve down with your son about
Next weekend, yeah.
about the role.
Mhm.
Okay.
Steve,
The issue that I would have is, does your son or daughter feel that it's challenging to work for you?
no. My daughter works because she's able to supplement her income with her two kids. And she doesn't have the desire to be more involved because she has other things in her life that are going on. My son, I think, looks at it from a different perspective as the oldest son, in wanting to know what's going on in dad's business and wanting to maybe help in any way he can. But I have to think about the discussion with him. If he were, involved, coming in and spending a few days here a month, would that give him a better perspective of what's going on so he could be more of an integral asset in understanding more?
Does he meet with you quarterly in a board meeting?
We had been, and then that kind of petered away.
Okay. So I would kind of go that way first and see how engaged he becomes.
Mhm.
He's, the expectation of him to come here, spend time with you in the business. He doesn't have to be physically here at this moment in the
Mhm.
role that he's playing. He just needs to have a good insight of how you think and how the business is run and how profitability is maintained.
Yeah, I think that you would see in some of the board meetings, he's articulate and he understands, and I think he understands me. But I guess I was raised that you kind of don't discuss a lot with your kids, and that's probably not right.
That's
Especially,
old school.
I know, I know.
But I think Stephen brings up a good point about the intellectual leadership skills that are available today to leaders. I know Rich sees them a lot as being a partner in a financial service firm. That the ability to manage at arm's length can be almost more powerful than the ability of managing hands-on of 40 years ago, and learning how to adapt and look at these new ways could be very powerful for you. So I think that's very, very interesting. But Stephen opened it up, and I was going to do it in the next segment, that the whole concept of a board or board of advisors. Do you have one? And if you do, how long have you had it, and how do you utilize it as a maturing leader of an organization? And that'll be for our last 2 minutes, and then we'll go into our next segment.
We do have one, which we had for a couple of years, and Jeffrey, you and Steve are on the board, as well as accountant, and Jeffrey, that we have different visitors that come. My son was on at the beginning, and that petered up for different reasons. I find it valuable. I find you hold me to some tasks. You hold me to the fact of let's move this forward. Let's make the organization strong with or without you, so that you can have a better balance in life as time goes on. I never imagined that at this age I'd be working as much as I am now. So slowly, and Jeffrey, I don't move real fast on a lot of things, even though a lot of things I do very quickly. Getting there and putting people in place and policies so that I can have a better balance, and or at some point step back if that's the trajectory I think is best for the family.
Well, I will pay you compliments that you mentioned that Steve and I are on your board, and I do have access to you. I used to have a client who used to say to me, I make all decisions really slow, so I make them right. And I don't make a lot of mistakes. And I would say that you sort of follow the mythology of the tortoise always wins the race. Uh, you're not prone or comfortable with little mistakes and quick decisions. You're prone to doing things right, and I think that you've proven that over and over again. But as we come to the end of this segment, and I'm not saying that because I'm trying to win favor. I'm saying it because I actually believe it. I'm going to turn it over to Jillian King, our producer, at the end of our second segment.
Thank you, everyone, for your insights into the family business landscape. That wraps up part 2 of this spring 2026 FBA Family Business Panel discussion. Thank you to all our listeners and viewers who have tuned in for this panel. Be sure to check out part 1 if you didn't already hear it, and part 3 of the discussion to hear more on these topics. And if you're a fan of our videos, please be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, and press that bell button. Radio Entrepreneurs is also active on LinkedIn, so follow our page there for more business advice and topical business discussions throughout the year. Until next time, goodbye and thanks for listening. We'll be back with more stories on Radio Entrepreneurs.